Welcome to another episode of MusiQuest, and today I'm going to tell you about how I actually got to start playing electric guitar. Well, in particular, how I got my first electric guitar. And it's actually a funny story. Well, to me, obviously, because also it's one of the most important moments in my life. So, if you play electric guitar, you'll probably relate to it somehow. I don't know. It would be interesting for me to hear about how you got your first electric guitar. Anyway, so what happened is I was already hanging out with the rock band in school, but I didn't have yet an instrument because I decided to go straight for electric guitar. That's what I wanted to do now, but I didn't have any. I had no idea how to play one. So I started to tell, family and friends that I decided to do that. And I was looking for one. And the first thing I did was I started to look in the newspaper for an ad for guitar for sale or something, because that's what we did back then, grab the newspaper, go to the ad section and find stuff that people would be selling and buying. And I found this ad from a guy who was selling one, and the address pointed at like a little restaurant somewhere in town. So I went there with another friend of mine, and so he was the musician in the restaurant. He worked there just singing and playing, setting up an ambience for the restaurant. And so we came in and we met him. He's like, "Yeah, I'll show you the guitar." So he took it out. I was not particularly crazy about this guitar model. I knew nothing about guitar models, but I knew that this one was kind of like really funky looking, so I wasn't too into it. But I said, okay, let's check it out. So he plugged it into like a little amp he had there with him, and he's like, "You want to try it out?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really play guitar yet." He's like, "Fine, I'll play it for you, so you can just hear it and see that it actually works." Okay, fine. So he plugged it in. He played like this little blues lick, little pentatonic thing. Nothing, nothing very complicated. But to me, it was like, oh my god, he's a god in the guitar. Maybe he can teach me or something. I was super impressed. Then he played a little bit, and he's like, "Well, what do you think?" And I was like, well, I'm gonna go check out a couple more, but we'll be in touch. We exchanged numbers, whatever." And I left, and I was like, I'm gonna think about it, because again, I was not very convinced by it. And a week after that, my cousin, who lived in a nearby town, the one that made me the rave mixtape that I told you about in a different episode, she calls me and tells me like, "Hey, I've heard you're looking for an electric guitar." And I'm like, "Yeah." And she tells me, "Well, I have this friend who got one for Christmas, but she's not really interested in it. She doesn't play, and she's like just lying there. So she's thinking of selling it. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So next weekend, I took off to go to her place. It's a very important part of my family anyway, so I would see them often. So I went there, and I was gonna stay for the night. So during the evening, we went to her friend's place, and she received us, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll show you the guitar." So she brought it over, and the moment I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is the most gorgeous guitar ever." It was basically a Fender Strat knockoff from no name brand with a sunburst finish and a white pickguard. Like basically your basic Fender Strat, but from no name. But I didn't care. To me, it looked amazing. And her dad was there, and he plugged the guitar onto his home stereo. And he told me like, "Okay, you want to give it a try?" And I was like, again, like, well, I don't really play yet. It's like, "Okay, fine, I'll play it for you." So he strummed some chords on it, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing. This is great. I'm sold." So I had my money with me I had sold some stuff that I had to have the money for the guitar. So I paid her. We went back home. That night, I remember I was gonna sleep on the floor because whatever. And I slept with the guitar beside me, and I was so like, this is it, this is it. I have my guitar. I'm gonna be able to play. So next week, I go to a band rehearsal because the band was already rehearsing some stuff. That were just waiting on me to get a guitar. They knew I was getting one, so I arrived with my guitar in hand, and I'm like, I've got my guitar, and the guy who was the band leader, he was like, okay, give it to me. He took it, he tuned it, he gave it back to me, and then he called the bass player, who could, just like play a little bit of guitar, and told him like, okay, showing some chords and some chord progressions. Okay, fine. So we sat down, and this guy tells me like, okay, I'm gonna show you chords and then progressions and some exercises. Write them down because you're gonna do them like every day. Fine, perfect. So he started to show me like, okay, this is D major, this is A major, this is G major, this is E major, this is whatever, the basic chords. I wrote everything down, and some exercises to start getting my fingers going, dexterity and stretching and whatever. And I went back home with my guitar, and as of that day, I started to play 8 hours per day, every day for the next few years. To me, this was the best thing I have ever done in my life. I could just not stop playing with my guitar. And there's an interesting thing that happened along the way that I'm gonna tell you about because it's kind of related. But at one point, I would be playing my guitar, and I would be like, man, like I knew already, like mostly some power chords and just basic majors and minors. And I was like, I don't know what I'm missing, but my guitar, I wanted to sound like, like rock. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like, it sounded like clean. So I didn't know what I was missing. I thought like, there must be like a technique or something I haven't learned yet to make it sound like that. So one day, I'm again with my band buddies, because at this point we were really good friends. Everybody in the band, we became really, really close friends. And I was with the bass player and like, dude, please help me with something. I need you to tell me about this. Like, okay, sure, what? And I was like, listen to this. So I played one of, I don't know, Def Leppard or Motley Crue. I don't remember. Like, listen to that. Like, okay, yeah. And then I was like, now listen to this. So I played the guitar. We were at my place, and I had plugged my guitar into the home stereo because I didn't have an amp. So I plugged into my dad's home stereo, something he would dread. But that's what I was using. And I play it, and it's like, what am I missing? Why doesn't it sound like this? And he's like, are you talking about distortion? And I'm like, I don't know. Is that what it is called? Yeah, distortion. I just want it to sound like, like rock. How do I do that? How do you strum to get it to sound like that? He's like, well, no, there's no actual technique to do that. You basically buy a pedal. It's called a pedal. It's an effect, and you just plug your guitar onto it, and it makes distortion. It's like, okay, cool. Where do I get a pedal like that? It's like, well, any music store. So interestingly enough, there was this Yamaha music store literally 50 meters from my house. It was just like a walk of like 30 seconds, and I'd be there. And the guys already knew me because obviously I was spending all my afternoons in there looking at stuff. I had no idea about pedals though. So I went right this day to the store, and I was like, they're like, hey, Sergio, how you doing? Good. Do you have a distortion pedal? They're like, yeah, we do have those. Okay, how much are they? So they showed me, we have, this one, and it's this much. So I saved money for a few weeks. I came back, and I'm like, okay, I'm here for my distortion pedal. Sure, okay, here it is. I was super excited, and then the guy was like, you do have an extra cable, right, for this? I was like, why? Right. He's like, well, you're going to need one because you're going to plug your current cable into the pedal, and then you need another cable to go from the pedal over to your amp or whatever. And I was like, no. They're like, don't worry, we're gonna throw one in for you. So they just gave me an extra cable, and I was like super happy. And I'm about to leave. It's like, wait a second, do you have batteries? No, like, batteries? Yeah, this thing takes batteries. You're gonna need a battery. Okay, which kind of battery? I have 9-volt square battery. We don't have those, but we know you can get one somewhere. Like, yeah, fine, don't worry about it. So I went somewhere and I bought a battery, came back home, I plugged everything together, I turned on the pedal, and I played a power chord, and it was the definition of bliss. I was completely in the clouds, and I just started to play every riff that I knew, which were not that many, obviously, on my pedal, because it sounded exactly how I dreamed I would sound, you know? So that's basically how I got into having my stuff play the music that I loved. And after that, obviously, I was like all set to play with the band. So that was pretty much it. I think I'm gonna leave it at that for now. We're already at 11 minutes. So I hope that maybe your own journey into getting your first electric guitar was as exciting as mine. And next episode, I'll tell you a little bit more around into what kind of music I went from there. So until then, take care and rock on.